Welcome to the WWE Podcast, the most passionate and authentic wrestling analysis on the web. We've got you covered with every Raw, SmackDown, and NXT show, giving you a no bullshit opinion. We know you love wrestling. We do too. So let's get this show underway.
And that's the bottom line. What? 'Cause Stone Cold said so.
What is going on, guys and girls? Happy New Year. Welcome back to the SmackDown review. As always, I'm your host, Michael Ritter, here on the WWE Podcast. You can find me on social media at Michael5Ritter, and today we're going to be talking about the SmackDown that aired on New Year's Day, January 1st, 2021. It feels good to be sitting here covering a normal SmackDown on a normal time with really nothing going on in my personal life that is going to prevent me from doing a regular show. So I'm excited to get to do a regular SmackDown review with the top 5 at the end. We're going to do the top 5 moments of 2020, my top 5 moments of 2020, or at least the moments that I feel like will be remembered whenever I look back and think about this year in the WWE. As far as SmackDown itself goes, it was a pretty good episode, or mild. It wasn't bad. I don't really have anything to complain about. It started off with Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman and Jey Uso in the ring coming out to cut a promo. Roman actually cuts a pretty good promo. He's singing the praises of Paul Heyman and Jey Uso for what they've done during the last month and a half being by his side. Before he can finish, Roman is interrupted by Kevin Owens, but Roman actually tries to stop Kevin's interruption by having his entrance music shut off. He demands that the person in the back shuts it off, and then he starts verbally going after Kevin Owens. He tells him that he's lucky that he gave him an opportunity at the Universal Championship, and he's lucky that he gave him a big payday, and he hopes that he gave his family a good Christmas with that. And he tells him to beat it, scram, get out of here, and stop embarrassing his show. Kevin Owens responds by agreeing that him standing out there is an embarrassment to him, because him standing out there means that he and his family failed because he's still standing. He acknowledges that he basically, Roman Reigns that is, cheated to get the win last week because Jey Uso handcuffing Kevin Owens' hand to the rope. So Owens then calls out Jey Uso and challenges him to a match later that night, and he promises that Jey Uso is going to pay because of the actions of his cousin. And this is kind of like what I said last week, that it's very possible that they drag on this Kevin Owens feud a little bit longer. That seems to be a trend with all the championships on SmackDown, actually, and we'll find that out a little bit later as we keep going. So we will definitely get a little bit more info, or at least more in-ring action with Kevin Owens as the night goes on. So we have that to look forward to. And next, we have a one-on-one match with Big E and Baron Corbin. Sami Zayn is a guest commentator, and actually I noticed that Sami Zayn is pretty good on commentary. I'd actually like to see him do more of that. Obviously, I don't want it to come at the expense of his in-ring career, because he's also very good at that, as you guys all know. But I did notice that whenever he is on the mic, he makes everything more interesting. He's not like a robot out there talking and just saying what he's told, and he's good with on-the-moment stuff. Like if things happen in the match that are, pretty exciting, he's going to be able to point it out and speak about it in a unique way. And he always comes off with, that great heel perspective. So he is definitely a good addition on the commentary booth as a guest in this match here. One thing I noticed as a little sidebar is whenever they were introducing Sami on the commentary booth, the camera was on him, and Big E actually throws his shirt and he actually hits him in the face, and you could tell that wasn't planned, just by Sami's reaction, and even Michael Cole kind of chuckled a little bit at it. I just thought that was funny. I mean, good aim on Big E's behalf, because he definitely got Sami Zayn right in the face. But the match itself between Big E and Baron Corbin was actually a pretty slow-paced match. It only lasted about 7 or 8 minutes before Sami Zayn interfered, causing a disqualification. Corbin's 2 henchmen join in with Sami to make it a 3-on-1 advantage against Big E. And they start to kind of jump him a little bit before Apollo Crews comes to the rescue and makes the save. SmackDown goes to a commercial break, and when we get back from the commercial break, Michael Cole says that Adam Pearce turned the one-on-one match between Big E and Baron Corbin into a tag team match, making it Big E and Apollo versus Sammy and Corbin. And dysfunction begins to show on the heel team pretty quickly whenever Sammy gets upset that Corbin's boys aren't obeying the orders he's giving them. And things get a little heated between Sammy and Corbin after Zayn nearly hits them with the haluva kick, but he stops himself just in the nick of time. But Corbin and his boys, who he refers to as the quote-unquote Knights of the Lone Wolf, leave the ring and leave Sammy to take a enziguri and a powerbomb from Apollo Crews, immediately followed by a pinfall. And this is kind of the one championship, the Intercontinental Championship, on SmackDown that seems to be in somewhat of a transition after tonight. We'll get a little bit more on that in just a little bit as Big E's future plans are announced. But after the tag team match, or after the Intercontinental match, it wasn't for the Intercontinental Championship, just Big E versus Baron Corbin. I'm reading through my notes here, trying to get through this, and got me a little bit off guard. But Adam Pearce is shown backstage talking on the phone, but he's approached by Kevin Owens. And Kevin tells Adam Pearce to give him a match tonight against Jey Uso, but Adam Pearce seems very hesitant and uneasy about the idea, and he eventually just says that he can't do it. So Kevin asks for a match against Roman Reigns instead, but Pearce again says that he cannot do that either. So Owens then gives a somewhat passionate response to Adam Pearce that actually gives a very small smidge of a background into what or who Adam Pearce is, which is more than what we've gotten. I mean, we really haven't gotten any type of, introduction or any type of, background of what exactly Adam Pearce is in the company or how he got there. But Owens says that he's known Adam Pearce for 15 years and that Adam Pearce used to be his boss. And whenever he was his boss, they would talk about how the people who really matter in this industry aren't the ones in the locker room, but the people in the audience, and in this case, the people watching at home. He even references a possible history as an in-ring performer for Adam Pearce. I don't know if anybody else caught that. It kind of sounded like that's what Kevin Owens was referencing. But Pearce lets Owens' words get the better of him, so Owens gets what he wants whenever Adam Pearce gives in, which is a match tonight against Jey Uso. Adam Pearce's decision to go ahead and give Owens that match does not sit well with Roman Reigns, and we will find out more about that obviously a little bit later in the night. And we do end up getting that match between Kevin Owens and Jey Uso as the main event. So we are not done with that program by any means on this show. But continuing on here with Big E and Apollo Crews, they're shown talking backstage, and Kayla Braxton actually walks up to congratulate them on their victory before she asks Big E what we can expect from the Intercontinental Champion in 2021. Big E responds by saying that just like the 1967 Toronto Maple Leafs, he is going to be a fighting champion, go figure. He then says that next week he's going to be having an open challenge for his Intercontinental Championship, but before he can even finish speaking, Apollo Crews says that he accepts his challenge and the match is made official for next week. Big E versus Apollo Crews for the Intercontinental Championship. And I don't even know how many matches, or how many weeks in a row, that there has been a championship match on SmackDown or Raw or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to let it, cause me to go on a rant or be negative or anything like that. But I do feel like that's kind of taking the place of the, wrestlers going back and forth from different brands despite being on an opposite brand. We used to get that every week, and it would frustrate me. And I feel like WWE has done a great job with, cooling down on that a little bit and, being more strict on their own brand split rules. However, these championships, I feel like that's kind of taken the spot, or at least my attention on what needs to be improved or changed a little bit just on the main roster. I mean, I feel like these championship matches, I mean, we talk about it every week. The championships are not gaining anything by being defended every single week. just got, even if you do it on free TV, I mean, you don't have to do it every single week. I mean, even if it's not the same championships, like last week it was the Women's Tag Team Championships along with the Universal Championship. Tonight, I'm actually not 100% sure if a title was put on the line tonight on SmackDown, but, I mean, obviously we get one next week. I mean, it shouldn't be a rarity that we get one SmackDown a month where there's no titles defended. I mean, I feel like that should be more of the regular thing, and the championship being defended, that should be the thing that's pretty rare. But you guys already know how I feel about that. So moving on here, we get the Riot Squad versus Natalya and Tamina in a tag team match. And after the Riot Squad are already shown in the ring, Billie Kay was actually introduced first, and it appeared that it was going to be Billie and Tamina versus the Riot Squad, but then Natalya's music hit, and it was kind of an awkward situation where Billie ended up having to settle for being a quote-unquote manager for Natty and Tamina. But all Billie Kay ended up doing was be a distraction for both teams. I actually think she ended up switching who she was supporting in the middle of the match, and Tamina gets distracted by Billie Kay climbing up the steps and gets rolled up by Liv Morgan. The only roll-up of the night, don't worry. But the roll-up does give the Riot Squad the win. I can't help but get Lana vibes with Billie Kay from Lana's time around Survivor Series where she was just getting bullied every week. It seems like Billie is that girl on the SmackDown roster that nobody wants to be around. Even the Riot Squad were very unwelcoming when Billie was celebrating their victory. But speaking of the Riot Squad, this is another victory for them, and possibly 3 in a row if I'm not mistaken. A great way to start the new year for them. And I'm not sure when or how, but I do think that the Riot Squad are going to end up being the team to dethrone the seemingly inseparable and unstoppable team of Charlotte and Asuka, who were a no-show on SmackDown tonight, I did notice, so I'm not sure if that just means they have something planned for them on Raw, or if they are just going to be switching out weekly. Last week they were on SmackDown. This week we might expect them to be on Raw. So that could be what they're doing there. But you guys know I am a huge Liv Morgan supporter, so by default I am a Riot Squad supporter as well. And I mean, it's not hard to be one right now. They are a pretty good babyface tag team. I like what they bring to the table. Obviously, they're undersized against most teams, but that really doesn't affect them because they work pretty well together. They show a lot of tag team wrestling, so that's always good to see from a legit tag team like they are. So that is one team to definitely not. We don't necessarily have to cool our jets on them because they're not losing any matches. They're still kind of building that momentum, like we were saying. So, like I said, I don't know how or when. I don't think it's going to be by a clean victory by any means. Like I said, it might have to be the domino of Charlotte and Asuka not seeing eye to eye and something happening in that. I don't really know how to explain it, but basically, if Charlotte and Asuka kind of seem to butt heads and something happens there, you guys know what I'm trying to say. That could be where the Riot Squad kind of get their foot in the door to steal those tag team championships and bring them back to SmackDown. And staying in the women's division and moving on to another tag team match, we get Sasha and Bianca Belair versus Bayley and Carmella. Once again, we get to see the dream team of Sasha and Bianca team up. And we actually see them show some pretty good teamwork and actual tag team wrestling, like I just said with the Riot Squad. We've seen Sasha and Bianca do a little bit of that themselves. Sasha looked dominant in this match. She has Carmella right where she wants her in the bank statement in the middle of the ring before Reginald pulls Carmella out of the ring to save her, and then he himself climbs in the ring to have a face-off with Sasha Banks. He distracts Sasha enough to take her attention away from the match before he does a weird little backwards roll and then eventually does a backflip off the ring apron to avoid Sasha. And of course, the distraction caused Carmella to get the upper hand and hit Banks with a Mela Buster in the middle of the ring and finally get a pinfall over the SmackDown Women's Champion. Sasha and Carmella might be continuing their feud through the lead up to the Royal Rumble, similar to what they're doing with Roman and Kevin. I think WWE knows that there's still more there with these two women in terms of a good storyline. So it makes sense to drag it out at least a few more weeks. And one thing I do want to mention here is how good Sasha Banks is. I mean, she is good. I've heard multiple people, and I'm not trying to discredit anybody else's opinion. I mean, obviously everybody is entitled to their own opinion, and all of this is extremely subjective whenever you're talking about who is the best at this and that. But my opinion is Sasha Banks is by far the best women's worker in the WWE right now. I know a lot of people are high on Charlotte in particular, and nothing against Charlotte. I mean, her resume speaks for itself, obviously, but I've never been that high on Charlotte as just as far as whenever you mention her as, the greatest women's wrestler of all time. I mean, I will flat out be on record and say I do not agree with that. I mean, yeah, when it's all said and done, she's going to be the Ric Flair of the women's division. She's going to have all of these championships, Royal Rumble victories to hang her hat on. So obviously, not taking anything away from her right there, but if you're talking about just purely in-ring talent, Sasha is by far smoother. She's, in my opinion, more polished. I mean, obviously, she's probably been doing it a lot longer, where Charlotte might be more athletic. I mean, I know she has a history in other sports. Obviously, she has the genetics, so she is an absolute legend in her own right. And like I said, I'm not trying to take anything away from Charlotte. She's 100% a first ballot Hall of Famer herself. Just one thing I noticed about Sasha in this match, though, is just she was just head and shoulders, just looked like she was at a different speed. As good as Bianca is, and you guys know how I feel about Bianca Belair, Sasha is just that much better. Like, I feel like in this particular match, if somebody who didn't watch wrestling, they're just tuning in through the channels, and they just somehow stumble on it, not knowing any of the characters in this match, I think it would have been pretty clear to them just to know, all right, that lady there with the blue hair is probably the most talented in this ring. So that's always good whenever they can pass the eye test like that. And those of you that know, Sasha Banks is just, she's on fire right now. I mean, obviously, as the women's champion, she's finally starting to have those successful title defenses. So hopefully she doesn't drop that belt anytime soon. And I would just love to see her walk into WrestleMania as the SmackDown Women's Champion. But moving on here, like I said a little bit earlier, Roman Reigns would not be happy with the decision by Adam Pearce to go ahead and greenlight Kevin Owens and Jey Uso's match for the main event tonight, and that became evident or proven true, I should say, whenever Roman Reigns, Jey Uso, and Paul Heyman were shown backstage. Roman begins talking about how despite everything he's done for the company, they still made the match between Jey and Kevin Owens, even though they knew basically how he felt about that. And he says that means that somebody doesn't appreciate him, and he demands that Paul Heyman finds out who doesn't appreciate him, and obviously it was revealed to be Adam Pearce earlier in the night. So, I mean, we really didn't get anything about that other than it would probably suck to be Adam Pearce right now. But moving on here, we do get a little bit of good news as Sonya Deville is shown walking backstage. Corey Graves does clarify that she's been reinstated to the SmackDown roster. So this is another addition to the SmackDown women's division, and a great addition at that. I want to see what she has in a full-time singles role. Mandy being on Raw should force Sonya to spread her wings. And I feel like she can thrive on SmackDown as a legitimate heel. So it was definitely a good sign to see her walking. Definitely made me happy to know that she is back in WWE. And like I said, the women's division could definitely use a pretty good addition. And someone of her caliber is going to be great. So I want to see what she can do in that heel role going forward without a tag team partner. And moving on here, with the Street Profits, they have the New Year Smoketacular, where basically they just give their predictions for 2021. They don't get to make too many predictions, though, because they start by saying that the Sami Zayn's quote-unquote, was the Intercontinental Championship shirt will be the bestseller. That's their first prediction. Their second prediction is that Dolph Ziggler will get the nickname the Heartache Kid as a play onto him being a Shawn Michaels wannabe, like they've said multiple times. and they were about to address Robert Roode, but Ziggler and Roode actually crashed the party and attacked the tag team champions, laying a pretty good beating on Montez Ford with a steel chair. They took multiple shots to his left leg and appeared to injure him. So, I mean, you guys know what that means. You attack the champions, you get a title shot. It hasn't been announced yet, but just if you're going off history, it's pretty clear that Ziggler and Roode are the number one contenders for those tag team championships. Depending on where they go with the Montez Ford injury, of course, they could have him show up next week like nothing happened. We have definitely seen them do that, but this actually continues backstage whenever Caleb Braxton is interviewing Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode, and she asks what provoked their attack. Ziggler answers by saying that the Street Profits have been provoking them for months. He says that the Street Profits have something they want, and they're demanding a rematch for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships, and they're not going to stop until they get what they want. But Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode have been pretty consistent with their, pursuit of these tag team championships. They've shown that they're a legit threat to the tag team championships. The reference that Roode made to, in regards to the Street Profits, about it always being about games and jokes, and he asked if it's funny now, and I think that might be important because it could mean that we're going to get more of a serious/determined version of the Street Profits whenever they do come back for some revenge. They've shown that pissed off side of them before, and I think that they're 10 times more dangerous as a tag team whenever they're actually showing some passion and not only putting on a good show but inflicting pain into their opponents. I want to see a mean streak from the Street Profits, for lack of a better word. I just want to see them, show some anger. Put the jokes to a side for a little bit, just for the near future. I want to see them basically go on a streak where they show that they're not playing any games, and I feel like this was a perfect opportunity to shift their characters a little bit into more of a serious role. I mean, it doesn't have to be long-term. We all know that the Street Profits, they're their own thing. It is what it is, but I feel like with this attack, it just gives them a chance to add a little bit more of a layer and show that yes, they like to joke around, they like to have a good time, but whenever they need to flip that switch, they can't, and they're not going to tolerate being disrespected or cheap-shotted by Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode. But like you guys all know, you cheap-shot the champions, you're going to get that title match, so we can all look forward to that in the very near future. Up next, we get another tag team match. I believe this was the third tag team match of the night, between Daniel Bryan and Otis with Chad Gable versus Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura. It's nice to see Shinsuke and Cesaro back in an actual match. I feel like they're definitely too talented to be kept off the TV screen. They might have been making some appearances backstage over the last few weeks, but I feel like they definitely are too good to ride the bench for this long. Definitely got to get them in the ring. And Otis had to cinch up his belt a little bit to hang with these three guys. I mean, this is a tough task for anybody, much less a wrestler like Otis. So nothing too noteworthy really happened in this match. Daniel Bryan does hit, or he has a nice sunset flip. It's always nice whenever he hits those. Nakamura tries to roll Daniel Bryan up, but it put his arm in a pretty vulnerable position and perfect position for Daniel Bryan to lock in the yes lock and pick up the victory via submission. This really wasn't, like I said, this didn't further anything. Nobody made any declarations that they were going to join the Royal Rumble, nothing like that. Kind of just a little bit of a filler to keep all these guys on TV. So we didn't really get anything to, sink our teeth in with the Otis stuff or, anything going forward with Daniel Bryan. But they are definitely hyping him up and kind of positioning Daniel Bryan as an underdog. So we've been here before with Daniel Bryan. So I don't know. Part of me is kind of thinking that, I don't know. It's still way too early, obviously, to make official predictions for the Royal Rumble. And we've all, on this, podcast platform, you've all heard a bunch of different names come out as far as people who could possibly win it. Daniel Bryan has definitely crossed my mind. I feel like the Royal Rumble, and you can make exceptions every year. We do this every year, so it's not like it'll be the end of the world if a young guy doesn't win, but I always feel like the Royal Rumble is a perfect time for a young person or somebody who's looking for that push to obviously take advantage of that and use that as a springboard to maybe spark something in their career. But Daniel Bryan, it could be one of those unique situations kind of where he does kind of ride that top wave for just a little bit longer. It might secure that Royal Rumble win to further, pad his stats a little bit, you could say, for his already Hall of Fame resume. But as we transition from Daniel Bryan, who was a former victim of Jey Uso, we now move on to a current victim of Jey Uso and Roman Reigns, and that is Kevin Owens with their one-on-one singles match that Kevin requested. We get it right here in the main event, and this was actually like a UFC fight, where as soon as the bell rang, they went straight to swinging and takedowns. I mean, there were no elbow and collar locks or grappling, nothing like that here. This was straight, almost borderline fight. And Jey Uso actually thrives in these type of physical matches. I've noticed that. And Kevin puts a pretty good beating on Jey. He even says during the match that the worst part is it's not even your fault, in reference to he's doing all of this basically because of Roman Reigns. The match itself really wasn't much different from any of their previous matches they've had. I mean, like I said earlier, it's pretty physical between these two guys. It's just both their styles, so they're going to match pretty well. And SmackDown does cut to a commercial break pretty late in the match, and whenever they come back, it's not very long before Owens hits a pop-up powerbomb to Jey Uso and picks up the win. And after the match is over, Owens continues to beat up Jey Uso in an attempt to get Roman Reigns to come out to the ring. He handcuffs Jey to the ropes, similar to what happened to him the week before, and then proceeds to kick him in the face, and then kicks him when he's down, tied up. And after that isn't enough and Reigns doesn't show up to the ring, Owens attempts to take Jey Uso to Roman, while continuing to lay super kicks and punches on Jey while they're making their way up the ramp and eventually into the virtual crowd. But Owens is about to put Jey through the table, but at the last second he's attacked from behind by the big dog. And Jey Uso and Roman begin to double team Owens and throwing him against the LED boards. They each pick up a chair and start to go to town on him. Uso puts the handcuff chain around Owens' neck while Roman Reigns continues to take the chair shots to his midsection. There's no way around it. Owens took a beating tonight. He ended up going through a table before it was all said and done. A pretty decent drop, too. That was like at least 10 feet that he fell straight through that table, so I know that had to hurt. He definitely paid the price for demanding Roman Reigns to show up. And this is probably going to be one of those programs that we've seen before with Kevin Owens where he just constantly puts himself through hell, not caring what happens. He just wants to achieve a seemingly insurmountable task. One thing you can count on is he is not going to shy away from these beatings. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts SmackDown next week calling out Roman Reigns again and ends up taking on even more of a beating from Roman and Jey. But that is all stuff that we can expect going forward. As far as SmackDown itself, that is all I have for you for the SmackDown review. Sorry, it's late again, guys. Gotta bear with me. But anyways, it was a pretty good episode. I know that, like I said, the SmackDown or the Women's Tag Team Championships weren't on there. That was something that I was expecting maybe to get a little bit more. As you guys know, last week I said that maybe they might have been alternating multiple weeks. I did say that it might have been hard to do that with Asuka being the Raw Women's Champion, but I did think that maybe we could get those tag team championships to stay on SmackDown for just a little bit, but who knows? It could be coming in the in the weeks coming up in the near future. But before I butcher anything else here, I am going to go ahead and get you guys this top 5. And like I said, this is my top 5 moments of 2020, and we're going to get that right now. Alright guys, I am back and it is top 5 time. This week, like I said, is the top 5 moments, my top 5 moments of 2020. And this was actually kind of, a harder list to put together than I thought it would be. Some of these moments, probably like 75% of them are no-brainers. But, some of the moments that I thought were pretty memorable, I knew probably weren't top 5 worthy just as far as the general public or what they feel. So I didn't want to put anything on here or on this list that I didn't think you guys would necessarily agree with that it was even worthy. And it's not like I was pulling just, random things. But as you guys know, I'm a huge Pat McAfee fan, who obviously is no longer doing any work with NXT or WWE from what I understand. I mean, who knows what could happen, but as you guys know, I was pretty excited when all that stuff was going on in WWE. So that is one of my favorite moments that happened in 2020, but I didn't include it on the list because I wanted to keep it more things that is more relevant with the WWE main roster, I guess you could say, not necessarily NXT. I just want to keep it where everybody knows and can somewhat agree that these 5 things are worthy of being on the list. So I'll just call that one an honorable mention. But we will go ahead and get to this top 5 list right now. And I'm not going to, I mean, with some of these top 5s, you're able to, elaborate deep on them, maybe even provide some audio, make it a lengthy one. This one itself, I kind of just wanted, to throw in my top 5 moments that I thought happened just because we are moving on to 2021. I don't want to look back on 2020 anymore. So we're going to get through this. And number 5, I wasn't really sure what to put here. I kind of, went back and forth with a few things, but I thought that because of how rare this thing itself was, I definitely thought it was worthy of being on the list. And that is Becky Lynch announcing her pregnancy and basically relinquishing her Raw Women's Championship while she was on top of the women's wrestling world. So I think that that's worthy of being on this list itself because, we still haven't even seen her. Obviously, she's already given birth. She can be back probably any time between WrestleMania and SummerSlam. That's usually kind of the time frame. I'm not 100% sure. I don't want to act like I know what I'm talking about whenever it comes to mothers giving birth to babies and when they're able to go back and do something like be a professional wrestler. So who knows, but just itself, you never really see that. I know I've never seen anything like that happen before. So when that happened on Raw, I was definitely just completely just caught off guard. I don't know what else to say really. It just definitely threw me off. And it's crazy, that we still have not seen Becky Lynch back yet. It's nice that Seth Rollins is back. I actually thought he was going to make an appearance on SmackDown tonight, now that I think about that. I don't want to get off topic from the top 5. That just basically randomly came into my mind thinking about this. So I will do a little bit more research on that. But number 5, I have Becky Lynch announcing her pregnancy and relinquishing her Raw Women's Championship. And coming in here at number 4, I actually didn't really know between number 4 and number 3. You could easily, flip-flop these two. But I went ahead and went with, at number 4, Drew McIntyre capturing the WWE Championship at WrestleMania. We all can agree that he deserved to have that win, be in front of fans. If you know anything about Drew McIntyre as a person, you know how much everything that's going on right now in his career, you know how much that means to him and how hard he's worked to achieve this and get to where he is. So myself, I knew a lot of this stuff before WrestleMania happened. So kind of being able to anticipate that he was going to get that win and being able to kind of see it happen in the weeks leading up to it and know that he was being built up as a force who was worthy of basically dethroning Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania in not only a clean win, but a quick win, which is just something that you don't really see unless your name's Bill Goldberg. But so Drew McIntyre is just by far one of my favorite wrestlers on the roster right now. So seeing him capture that championship at WrestleMania was a little bit bittersweet, not having any of the crowd there or any fans, being able to do it at Raymond James Stadium in front of 70,000 people. But I do feel like his moment is still going to come, and he's proven over this past year that he is definitely capable of carrying the company. He's a great heel champion. His promos are some of the best every single week. They seem real. I just anytime Drew McIntyre comes out, I turn up the TV and I give him my attention because he is definitely one of the best in the business right now. So his big moment of 2020 is definitely top 5 material, so I will gladly put it at number 4. And at number 3, like I said, I could have easily flip-flopped this in number 4 because they both were kind of the same as far as impact whenever they both happened, because they both technically happened at WrestleMania, except one of them we knew what it was and the other one we really didn't, and that is Undertaker finally says goodbye. And you can say that is technically the Boneyard match that they had. You could say it was Survivor Series or, whenever, maybe even the Last Ride documentary that we got. But what you can definitely say is that 2020 was the year that we could all basically say goodbye to The Undertaker. I mean, he got probably wasn't his ideal version of his, send-off match. Obviously, he, probably had to come to peace with that himself, like we've all seen in that the Last Ride documentary. So I think that he had to definitely come to terms with he wasn't going to get that, that 20-minute perfect match that, was, in his opinion, I know I've used this word a lot at the end of the show, but in The Undertaker's opinion, worthy of being that send-off match. He probably knows that the best match that he could say was in that category was obviously the Shawn Michaels match at WrestleMania that ended up being Shawn Michaels' last match. Undertaker has said, if I'm not mistaken, that he wishes he would have, went out with him. I feel like that would have been a pretty, good storybook ending to both those wrestlers' careers. But, I mean, you really never know. Hindsight's obviously 2020. There were plenty of opportunities after that match for Undertaker to, rewrite history. I mean, there was an opportunity for him to fight Sting at WrestleMania. There were opportunities, with Brock Lesnar for him to put over Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. The matches didn't necessarily go how he would have liked, obviously. I mean, he's used to putting on 5-star matches for guys his size for 20 years, 25 years, however long it was that he was actually a consistent wrestler and dominating. So, I mean, 2020, I just look back and I know that it was a time that we went into this year not necessarily knowing when it was going to be goodbye for Undertaker, or even really knowing how much he was going through behind the scenes. And now, obviously, everybody knows that the days of Undertaker in the ring are, 99.9% sure that those days are over. So, number 3 here, we got The Undertaker saying goodbye. And number 2 here on the list, I have Roman Reigns' heel turn / comeback, whichever one you want to call it. Obviously, the heel turn is probably more memorable for most people. I mean, just specifically, I remember whenever I first started listening to this podcast, the WWE podcast, the intro was Matt actually said something about turning Roman Reigns heel. And this was back whenever I was just a huge Roman Reigns stan, and I was, I didn't want him to turn heel. Obviously, I mean, I was never really against the idea, but I was like, wait, turn him heel? What are you talking about? I mean, Roman Reigns is great, but obviously that was whenever I first started listening, and I've learned now a lot more about what was going on back then with Roman Reigns and Vince McMahon behind the scenes. So I understand the resentment that all the fans had towards him, but this heel turn itself is something that has been very long overdue. I mean, some people can say 5 to 6 years overdue, and that's just insane to think about, that something can be that long overdue and still end up working. Because, I mean, one thing that people, probably don't really think about is this thing wasn't a guaranteed success that it was going to work. Whenever he finally did turn heel, there's a very realistic possibility that he could have flopped and that it didn't work. I mean, obviously, whenever you have Paul Heyman and a lot of time to build it and creative behind you, making you look as strong as possible, you do have, the odds in your favor, but I mean, it's still not guaranteed. You still have to execute and go out there every week and deliver on the mic, deliver in the ring. I mean, he got in great shape, changed up his look. His music is obviously still the same, but other than that, I mean, he does feel like a completely different character. So this heel turn was, pretty big. I mean, it might have added some years onto his career. I mean, I know he came out and said not too long ago that he thought that 5 years might have been it, and that still could be true. I mean, the wrestling matches aren't getting any less brutal on his body just because he changed up his gimmick a little bit, but it's just one of those things that it might, just, add a little bit of gas to his tank, make him want to go a little bit longer now that he's not getting booed. I mean, obviously, I probably shouldn't have said that because he's not going to any arenas with fans, but I just feel like if he is getting booed now, I mean, it's because he's a heel, so it just fits a little bit better. I think that he's in a much better position. I really, really wish there were fans here. Side note, I actually was walking through a supermarket here in Texas where I live, and there was a line, gosh, I don't even know how long, and I was wondering what the line was for, and then I looked and I seen that it was a COVID vaccine line, so I mean, I'm not going to get into any of that, Don't really know how everybody feels about that. Personally, I was just saying that I took that as a sign, that maybe things are going in the right direction, that if there is a vaccine here in Amarillo, Texas, that there must be things going on in Stamford, Connecticut, or anywhere where the WWE might be planning on going. I mean, throughout everywhere. I mean, just the vaccine itself gives me hope that maybe come SummerSlam, maybe summertime. I mean, I'm basically accepting the fact that Royal Rumble and WrestleMania are both going to be without fans. Maybe they'll be able to plan and make it a lot better experience for the viewing fans from at home than they did last year. I'm not saying last year was bad, but obviously now they know what to expect, so that could all be great. But just the fans themselves, I do want to see, before I get too off topic here, how they would react to Roman Reigns. And if we don't get fans until SummerSlam, it's going to be, kind of crappy because, I mean, everybody's going to be used to it. It's just, it's a small price we got to pay for all this pandemic stuff that we did miss. Some pretty good fans being there for some of these moments. But luckily, the fans were there for what's next at number 1. And at number 1, it should come to no surprise to anybody. It's obviously Edge's return at the Royal Rumble. Completely unexpected. I remember just completely losing my mind whenever I saw that. It was kind of similar back, when it was kind of sad to think about what happened. Not necessarily anything bad, but just how excited everybody was at WrestleMania 33, I want to say it was, in Orlando whenever the Hardys made their return. That's probably the closest thing I can compare to whenever Edge made his return at the Royal Rumble. And that was just, it's a video that I've watched probably dozens of times on YouTube after that, just because that reaction, whenever you see Edge's face and his eyes, whenever he's looking at the crowd, you can just tell. That embracement, that was 100% real. He was fighting back tears, all the emotions. Whenever you see Beth Phoenix in the background, who actually participated in the Women's Royal Rumble match before that, and nobody still even suspected a thing when it came to Edge, and he wanted it that way. On the WWE Network, there is the Edge documentary. I'm not sure what it's called. It's not coming to me right now, but you guys have probably seen it. It's great. Most like everything else that the WWE Network does, this was no different. They show the behind the scenes behind Edge's recovery and just preparation for that day. And he knows how this stuff works. He knows how to connect with the fans, and he knows what's going to. He's a professional in every sense of the word. So he didn't want any of the fans to know. He made sure that nobody knew. And whenever he came out at number 21, I could just remember everybody that was here at my house just completely lost their mind. Nobody thought that we were going to ever see Edge in the ring again. And seeing the shape he was in and him just go face-to-face with wrestlers who you didn't think he was ever going to be able to step in the ring with again, and even some who he had stepped in the ring with before. I think that WrestleMania, not having any fans, obviously was just killer for Edge's little stint that he did have before he got hurt again, but hopefully he will get to have some matches in front of fans. I don't know in the near future, like we just talked about, so I don't think that it'll be anytime soon, but we can definitely expect Edge to stick around for a little bit and probably get at least one more match. Hopefully at least one more. I'm hoping for a lot more, but hopefully at least one match in front of fans. But there you go, guys. That was my top 5 moments of 2020. Let me know what you thought about it, what your top 5 moments were. I am looking forward to not thinking about 2020 anymore and moving on to 2021 and just getting ready for everything that it has in store. Once again, I want to say Happy New Year's. It's actually New Year's Day that I started this podcast, and it is definitely not New Year's Day anymore. It's actually January 2nd, so I did make it past midnight, but like every other time, guys, I enjoyed doing this. This was a great way to start my 2021. I got to watch some of the college football semifinal games. I'm not sure if any of you guys are football fans. Some of you probably are, and you know what I'm talking about. So I got to watch those games as well as SmackDown, and then jump on here and do this recording. I never take it for granted. I love being able to do this with you guys every week. I actually think it's pretty cool. Earlier in the year of 2020 is whenever I actually, got the idea that I really wanted to, get into podcasting, in whatever way. Whenever you get that idea that you want to do that. You really don't know how you're going to start. You don't even know what to do, what equipment to buy, all that. It's a pretty overwhelming thing whenever you actually try to get started. Luckily for me, I was able to listen to plenty of podcasts that, got me comfortable with it and everything as far as, knowing what I want to talk about. Because that's number one, is figuring out what you want to talk about. And I know that this isn't a How to Podcast 101, and I'm certainly not the person to teach that. I'm just saying, or what I'm trying to say is that in 2020, whenever I was, manifesting all of this in my mind, if you would have told me that I would be starting 2021 recording this podcast for you guys here on the WWE podcast, I would have definitely probably not believed you. So this is all, still pretty cool to me, getting to do all this. I can't thank Matt enough for giving me the keys of the SmackDown review. It gives me something to look forward to every week, and I definitely do. So next week I will definitely be back, and I'm going to have a top 5 for you guys next week too, so we'll get back on that back-to-back schedule. And I'm looking forward to just having these normal episodes now. I mean, Christmas is over, New Year's is over. There's really nothing that's going to prevent me from doing these on Friday nights. I mean, and the things that I've done, or the things that have kind of gotten in the way and I've been able to record around them, show me that there's probably not going to be anything that's going to stop me from doing these. So as long as I am alive, you can expect that you are going to have a SmackDown review every Saturday morning. But as far as this week goes, that should do it. So I will talk to you guys next week.